Welcome into Warchant TV. I'm Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com, and this is a new program called The Sauce. We'll explain that a little bit further, a little bit later on. And a new face to some of you, not to all of you. He's a longtime Florida State fan and a contributor to Seminole headlines through the years. Kevin Bauer, who you might remember as Bauer Sauce, asked a lot of questions on the show, was part of the conversation sometimes on Seminole headlines. But Kevin Bauer is with us as well. And how you doing, Kevin?
Doing great. Good
Awesome.
good Monday morning yourself.
Good, man. All good. So the sauce is going to be a different show in the sense that we're just going to tackle one topic. We're not going to kind of touch on everything that's going on in Florida State sports. We've got Wake Up War Chant, we've got the Jeff Cameron Show, we've got Seminole Headlines, we've got all these other shows. This is going to be one topic where we kind of dive into it and give you two different perspectives. Me as a journalist, member of the media, lowercase journalist, member of the media, and Kevin is just a longtime Florida State fan. His dad was a high school coach in the state of Florida. His dad used to work Bobby Bowden's camp, so they've been around the program. They've been around the Noles forever. And I thought it would be good to have two different perspectives as we tackle some of these subjects. So, what's our first subject here for the listeners?
It's why do FSU coaches lose their way?
So, that's a pretty. If you've clicked on this video,
Rod.
yeah, and if you've clicked on this video, you probably saw the creative thumbnail that Tom or one of our staff came up with probably pictures of Mike Norvell and Jimbo Fisher. And when people hear that topic, I'm sure they can get a sense that that's probably who we're going to be mostly focused on. One overarching thing that I've given some thought to, and I actually had this conversation with Jimbo Fisher not too long ago, that I think the fact that Bobby Bowden did what he did at Florida State and took this program that really was so young, so new. Was Florida State was thinking about giving up football when Bobby Bowden was hired in '76, and then he turns it into this juggernaut dynasty, and he never had the resources. Like he never had the big money. He never had the legions of donors and the billionaire companies supporting him, and so they always did it kind of on the cheap. And that's the beauty of what Bobby Bowden did. But I also wonder sometimes if it's a curse for Florida State because I feel like, and I think Jimbo certainly feels this way, that there was a feeling of why do you need all of this? Bobby didn't need all of that. Like, why do you need these facilities? Why do you need these all this money for coaches? Why do you need
Correct.
all? And so I think that's something they've always kind of battled. But that's not why Mike Norvell has not been successful. And it really wasn't the reason why Jimbo fell off the face of the earth with his team, where they were 2-5 or whatever his last year. I think his frustrations about the lack of resources kind of spiraled and like turned things off the edge. And then, Norvell, they've thrown plenty of money at it. But they're probably also behind the eight ball historically compared to some of these other teams. But what do you think about that theory, though, that the mentality of Florida State has always been like, you can do it just by being smart, creative, energetic, recruiting, and do you think it took Florida State too long to realize, no, man, money's going to be a huge part of it?
Right.
Yeah.
And then that might spoil you to the fact that well we can always do that. Um and especially I don't think it applies to Mike because Jimbo left and there was certainly a different backing after Jimbo left because of that realization where it's you're not going to be able to play in college football now with lesser. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be even quicker turnaround to failure. But again, like we said, I don't think that applies to Mike's um, or anything to do with the 2024 season as far as backing coming into play. I think there's a whole host of things that I've got written down that might speak to 2024 more than any type of money
I
issues or backing.
Yeah, and I think I mean, from a big picture standpoint, where I push back a little bit on the idea that it's unique to Florida State, though, is I think it's human nature that coaches don't have sustained success. I mean, I think the reason Nick Saban is Nick Saban is because he, was able to do it and sustain it.
Correct.
And I just think that Florida State was fortunate to have two coaches pretty much back to back. We can act like the Willie era never happened. We can just kind of close our
Who?
eyes. Yeah, it was.
What did
Never
you?
mind. I'll tell you about it later.
We had a
Uh,
coach named Billy. He's
the
a. Never mind.
pretty close to back to back. You had a coach in Jimbo Fisher who in year three wins a national championship, and well, I guess year four, 2013, he came in 2010 as head coach. So yeah, his fourth season, wins a national championship. They win 26, 27 straight games, 29 straight games, whatever it was. And the program is at the bell of the ball. I mean, they are the program in college football once again, like they were in the 90s. And then it just comes crashing down. And then Mike Norvell took him a little longer, but 2014 he goes 3-0 or 13-0, and also wins 23 games basically over two seasons, and then also it comes crashing down really quickly. So I think that part's unique to Florida State that you've had two coaches close to back reach these great heights, but then not be able to sustain it. Whereas most programs would kill for either of those seasons, like
Right.
either of those runs of success. So I think it's
Well,
kind of the highs and lows too is accentuates it maybe.
I think I think 2 points there. I circled and wrote down human nature. I mean, that's the whole thing. How many things do you do or do I do that we don't want to do, or the opposite? The things that I don't want to do and I still do it.
Right.
Discipline, right? But emotions are fickle, and people have lives outside of coaching football, and that doesn't even include anything that happens on the field and off the field and all of those other humans that have their emotions and girlfriends and moms and things like that going on. That's why the Saban model is absurd. It doesn't make any sense that a one person could sustain something involving so many people that long. And then the second thing I'd say that you hit on is a lot of, and I don't want this to be the first podcast that I'm saying a lot of teams would be appreciative to be Florida State, but it's absurd to have Bobby Bowden and then Jimbo do that, and then what maybe could have happened if injuries don't happen or what have you.
Yeah.
With Mike's success in 2024 or 2023, it's unheard of to do that. People don't win national titles. People don't compete for national titles. It's the elite of the elite. So that brings me back to even more how unique Florida State is to have those three coaches in their lineup at all. Because LSU's like, man, Ed Ogeron sucks, but I'll take that title. Like, and where they got another long stretch, and that's at LSU, and it's everyone wants to win, and the fact that we've been able to compete with three different people, I think, is extremely unique. No,
It's
that's not really in college football history.
that's a
Even
really
though we
that's a
didn't,
great point, and it's something that I think we should really kind of spend a couple seconds on because
yeah,
and I think as FSU fans, there's still a feeling I sense, and I didn't grow up around Florida State like you did. I didn't grow up wearing garnet and gold. I wasn't even a college football fan when I was young. I kind of got into it when I got into college and got into sports writing. But I think because so many FSU fans are used to having the chip on the shoulder, that they weren't the flagship school of the state. UF got all the resources. UF got all the benefits. All those reasons. I think sometimes FSU fans don't even appreciate what they've done, like what this school, what this football program has done. And go look at some of these programs that we consider blue bloods. Like how many national titles over the last 50 years has Texas won? Has Michigan won? Has I mean, Ohio State's
correct,
won the three, but like it's not like anybody else has won 10 titles. And so that I think is something that I think Florida State fans sometimes lose sight of. And then again, especially it's compounded with the swings. If
correct,
Jimbo could have just stayed on track. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. Clearly, the school, there was not a unified vision. I think that's one thing you can definitely say for in 2025 in the last few years for Florida State. Mike Norvell, the AD Michael Alford, the president Richard McCullough, the board of trustees Chair Peter Collins, and everybody around them is focused on, man, football has to win. Football, whatever they need, basically, we're going to do because football has to win for this athletic department to be successful and this university to keep getting record number of applications. And that probably wasn't the case when Jimbo was here, frankly. There was a focus on the administration wanted like a more comprehensive sports program. They wanted a when he wanted a football facility, they wanted like an all sports facility. There was just a different approach, and that so there's fault there on the administration side, but also on Jimbo's side because he didn't work through that. He just got pissed off and basically secluded himself, didn't work with the rest of everybody else, and then just it was a matter of time before he left. Um,
Right.
so that's frustrating because like you had this window, and I know FSU fans I mean that had to be how old were you when from the 13 team was winning?
13, I would have been, I can do math, 22.
So man,
Yeah.
that's is there a better time to be alive? You're
I
20.
mean, it was crazy. I mean, it was, I football was it. That's all I did. And then my team was Florida State. Like it was the best. My brother, I'm sitting at watching it with my brother. Like he got to experience, my brother's 7 years older than me, 8 years older than me. He got to experience 93, 99.
Right,
When I was 8, I was not watching the TV.
right.
So yeah, that 2013 stretch of just like looking at my friends in West Virginia, like go Mountaineers, was pretty fun. It was pretty fun to watch that level of success on the field, and then time this too shall pass.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody involved kicks themselves, right? I mean, you got to assume. I know Jimbo clearly. If you saw his interview recently, he did with Freddie Stevenson, and he talks about how he never wanted to leave
I
Florida
haven't seen
State.
that.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about how he never wanted to leave Florida State and all that, which is, I mean, I agree. I'm sure he has regrets. But I don't know if he realizes like that he played a role in all this, like that
Mhm.
it wasn't just the administration didn't buy in or didn't invest the way he wanted them to. It was, how he responded to that and then letting everything. Because I think, and if we want to get into some of the weeds now, but like when I think back to Jimbo's time, he lost his way from the standpoint of he got so consumed, from my vantage point, he got so consumed with what they weren't providing, what resources he didn't have. Clemson got their new facility. I mean, they're going to unveil, FSU's going to unveil their new football facility here in 2025 at some point this fall. He started
Yeah,
pushing for that in 2016. I mean, it's 9 years ago.
correct.
And it would have been built for a third probably of what they're spending on it now. I mean, I think it's 150 million or more. They could have probably built it for 50 million in 2006 dollars or 2016 dollars. And
Right.
so there's so much blame to go on the FSU side, but I'm sure Jimbo realizes now they went to A&M that man, maybe I could have worked through it at Florida State because
Sure.
the grass isn't always greener.
So, um, I asked my dad about this question,
And real
and
quick, so
what you
your dad was coached high school football in the state of Florida,
sure.
and I know I talked to him a little bit about it. He used to come up and kind of help out at some of the Bowden camps. So your
Right.
dad, is he originally from Florida, or when did he become a Nole? Do you know?
So everyone from my family's from West Virginia. My dad somehow, I don't know how technology worked at that point, but somehow in the 80s decided to drive to Florida and get a job coaching. I know he talked to people at different camps and things, and he got down there, did some offensive coordinating, and then he became a head coach at Okeechobee High School. And that was when he would do the camps. I'm not sure how long he was there, maybe 12 years, something around that time. And he worked with Bobby, went to the camps at Florida, went to the camps at Miami. And I used to say this differently, but one of those guys is a nice guy. And then I'll leave off the second comment.
So
And then
he developed an affinity for Bobby Bowden in Florida State.
correct. And he sent a couple players there, sent a couple players to West Virginia, different places. And he liked him, and then he showed my brother college football, and he liked it, and I liked whatever he liked. So that's how I got into the Noles. Was dad's a football guy, brother's a football guy, brother's a Nole. I'm going to have to do the same thing.
Right.
And yeah, um, so I texted him. I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he said, "Quote." I feel Jimbo wanted. I'd like to hear your thoughts on his thoughts.
All right.
He said, I feel Jimbo wanted everything right now and made certain donors mad when he acted like a god of college football. But I give him all the props for recruiting, game plans, and most of all halftime adjustments. And that was his Jimbo take. He goes on about Mike, but maybe we'll come back to that.
Yeah, man. I
Is
think
that?
you're.
I mean, that's
Yeah, I
that's
think
what it is, right?
your old man nailed it. And what's interesting about Norvell, and we could transition to him, is I made this comment to somebody 2 or 3 years ago, like when Norvell started turning it around, maybe two years ago. And listen, man, he got demanding too. Like, I don't know if you remember about a year and a half ago, after 13 wins, they announced they were buying, the university was going to buy an airplane or two to help with the recruiting. And that was a constant complaint of Jimbo's that they had to, I mean, you're in Tallahassee, you can't be flying commercial to get
Correct.
to where to compete with Kirby and all these coaches with helicopters. Well, Mike's got a helicopter, use of a helicopter. They've got planes, and so but the comment I made to somebody was, I felt like at some point with Jimbo, it became about power. Like it became about, and I think this is what your dad's getting at. Like also, it's like, Jimbo, he thought he had the vision for where it should be, and his vision was probably more accurate, honestly, definitely more accurate than the people in the administration, that you can't do it on the cheap. You have to invest because this money is going to get so big, and like none of us realized that. I think Jimbo did, and probably some other people did, but a lot of us didn't realize that the money was going to get so huge from TV, and the gap was going to get so big that you have to be at the highest level to really compete. But I felt like he got where he lost his way a little bit was it became about power, and he wanted the control. He wanted the control, as you're saying. He wanted everything he wanted now, and he wanted the control to set the vision. At the end, from what I understand, he wanted control of the purse strings. Like he wanted the budget. He wanted to be able to make the decisions about what they did in athletics, and that's where things completely fell apart. But what I said to somebody a couple years ago about Norvell was I felt like he was going to demand more. He was demanding more because he felt like he needed it, but it wasn't about the power, in my opinion. It was more about these are like we're winning, we're having success, you know, this is what we need. And the administration was working with him, but I didn't feel like, and maybe it was because he was dealt with different circumstances. It didn't feel like it was about power. It was about just, hey, we need more resources. Now, ultimately, he couldn't sustain the success in the short term anyway because of all some of the factors you mentioned, and we can talk about more of them. But I thought that that was going to be the key for Norvell maybe being successful in the long term was it wasn't going to be about these internal struggles. It was going to be more about the direction of the program. But then I think what I realized, and it's not too amazing, but like there's more to it than that. You also there's
Right.
other things that go into play, and I think so. I think they both. It's like these are two prominent Florida State coaches, the two most prominent of the last 20 years, and they both had these rises, and Norvell's was a quicker fall, at least for now. But I think it's different circumstances though, like I don't
100%.
think it's the same. It's not like it's not to me, that's not intrinsic about Florida State necessarily because these were different circumstances. Does that make sense?
Totally. I want to say one coach had, I want to say Norvell, his results were on the field where Jimbo's almost happened, like you're saying, internally. And then that season happened
Right.
where the program was here, we got here with Norvell, and then those people went away, and then we brought in transfers that clearly weren't the same level, and then the play dictated why we're saying Norvell has problems. Where Jimbo, we were like, there's some problems, there's some problems, there's some problems.
Right.
Boom, 2018 hits. Like
Yeah,
we're
you're right.
sitting there.
It's more
It
like
was like
yeah, it was
happened before the field.
right. No, that's a good point. And that's funny, man. Like, and you could probably touch on this for your perspective as somebody who's watching it and maybe consuming some of the content, to because you knew what we were saying, and you know, it was a weird time from a media perspective because the team is doing well enough. Like you're winning, in the aftermath of 2013 and 14, which was its own little vortex or whatever. After that,
Even
2015 and 2016, you're still winning 10 games a year. You're going to the
right.
Orange Bowl. you're beating Michigan because, of course, because Jabril Peppers didn't play. It's the only reason they won that game. But you're still having success. And I think, Jimbo, or, and again, some people that may know the name Bauer and Bauer saw us from some Seminole headlines, the questions you used to send us. But I remember vividly during those years, Jeff would, Jeff's complaint was, and I'm not going to give him all the credit for saying he saw the problems, but his complaint was, okay, now just a team that goes 10-3 every year. Like is that what you're going to be? And if that is what you're going to be, then fans are going to start to get restless. Like this was
Right.
cool. Getting us out of the dregs of the 2000s was awesome. Winning those 29 straight games was fantastic. But if it's just going to be 10-3 every year, like at some point people are going to be frustrated. I pushed back. I was like, I don't know, man. I think 10 wins is pretty cool. I think people are going to be fine with that for a while. And I think Corey did as well. But what we didn't really hit on was that there were things underneath that were so crumbling. Those relationships,
Right.
the lack of accountability. He kind of was taking his. I think he lost focus on recruiting. I think he lost focus on accountability and how hard the guys were working.
Mm,
And so that's all eroding, but you really can't point to that because they're winning 10 games. I think that's probably the
100%.
most frustrating thing of the time I've covered Florida State is you saw stuff happening, but it's hard to ring the bell when and how would you have
I,
received that? Like how would you have received that
so
as a listener or fan?
so for me, I think I probably align with very few fans in that I have realistic expectations always, and in the way that I personally, if I have a college football program that I'm following and we're winning 10 games and losing three every year, I'm pumped because that means we're a year away from getting the right piece, the
Right.
couple right pieces, and doing what LSU did and doing what we did in 2023. Like if you're staying at that level of kind of close, then you can easily get up there. When you go 2-10, it's really hard to find yourself right back in it the next year. So I think living in that world is fine, but to your point, living in that world is fine when you don't have Frenchie as your leader and leading your team out the tunnel and being selfless as all get out.
Right.
It doesn't. We don't know that without that documentary. When I was watching that documentary with Notre Dame, I was like, "What's going on? I don't think you're supposed to talk like that." But you don't know that. If we weren't privy to that documentary, I have no clue what's about to come to Florida State. Not that I saw the writing on the wall that explosion was about to happen in a year, but
Yeah.
to your point, I'm a fan that is all about sitting at 10-3 and then popping off and winning a national title because what we just said earlier, Saban doesn't exist outside of Saban.
Right.
We can look at Kirby and Kirby's success is amazing too, but it's not what Saban's done. It still hasn't. And
And
he
we'll
has,
see. I mean,
yeah,
right
and we'll
now,
see. Exactly.
right now it feels like it's slipping.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah,
I'd rather be slipping down that hill though.
no, no. But I guess my question is like, if 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 we had come on the air, if we had come on the air in 2011, or excuse me, in 2016, and been like, man, I know they're still winning games, or 2015, whatever, they're winning games, but it's not just a talent issue. It's not just not having the right quarterback. It's not just
I
having,
got you.
guys aren't showing up to things. I mean, there's definitely an entitlement in the program that you can see. I mean, I'll just tell you, man, it's very difficult as a member of the media to bring things like that when it doesn't match with the results
Sure.
because there are teams that have success despite those things sometimes. So it's like, do you want to be complaining about all the problems when that doesn't match up with what you're seeing on the field? I mean, the Louisville game happened. You got beat by 1,000 points. You could have lost by 100 if Bob Vitrino felt the need to that day. So there were signs for sure, but it's hard to kind of get too far into ringing the alarm. And I don't know if it would have done any good anyway. It may have made us feel better later that we called it. We knew that this
Correct.
was coming, but I don't think any of us thought, even with the cracks in the program. I guess because my point is, like, from a fan's perspective, you were thinking, okay, they're still winning 10 games. You know, all we need is this piece or that piece, and the ball bounces right and we could be back in the championship hunt. I think if you gave me truth serum in 2016, 2015, I probably would have said 2016. I don't. There's a lot going wrong here. Like there's a lot of
Gotcha.
signs that are not good underneath, but I
Well,
wasn't brave enough to bring those out at the time because and then people will say after the fact, like after Jimbo left, Gene and I, we did the Jimbo Chronicles at warchant.com where we kind of went through all the things that were going wrong that led up to this time. And certainly some people were like, well, now you tell us. Uh,
correct.
so
No,
that's a challenge.
I think, I think to your point, it's difficult to do in general for you all in that moment. And then also, I don't think you want to do that because, and I'm speaking for you now, but because you're talking about 18 and 22-year-olds that you can see something that you can go, I don't know if that's right,
Right.
that could be fixed. You don't know that it might not be fixed. And to put a kid on blast like that, I think is another thing. And then especially your coaches are definitely not going to be happy when you're doing that and all that.
Yeah, that creates a challenge.
Oh,
I,
sorry.
and then I think, in a shorter window, this thing with Norvell, and we could talk a little bit more about that situation. Certainly didn't foresee 2-10. 100, no one, and never in my dreams did I think they would go 2-10, or even 6-6. I mean, I thought that they would be a 8 to maybe 9, 10 win team if things went well, but probably about an 8 win team. But looking back, there were some certainly big question marks. There were obviously, coming off the snub, how is that going to affect things?
Right.
How is Mike going to handle things? And I think that we'll never know the full effects of that, because
Correct.
I think not only was the program crushed by being left out, but he was crushed by the players opting out of the bowl game, and leaving those other dudes out there to just get bludgeoned by Georgia. I think that was foundationally problematic. Uh,
Right.
and I think that's something that probably we
Right. And a lot of
didn't spend enough time talking about at the time, I think.
yeah, just the mental state that that's going to put him in general of the snub, and then to see his kids that were bought in all year into this one thing, like you said, leave the other ones out to dry. And I just always think that you it's always taken for granted in college football or sports or anything like that that these programs, these teams, these players that go out and play on the field are machines, and that they don't have emotions and things that are going on in the background. And that's really, it never gets weight in these conversations, in my opinion,
Yeah.
especially something as huge as the snub. I mean, as a fan, I can't imagine what Mike felt as a fan looking at that screen when those other teams pop up there going, what is college football? You know,
Why are we
and
even
I've
doing this?
since now I say, okay, well, that's why yeah. Since now I go, okay, the college football committee, I guess I never paid attention to that name of what they are. It's a group of people that are going to say, we're going to pick four teams. And it doesn't have to do with what we've done in the past in the BCS era or what seems right or whatever. And we probably should have seen that coming when they talked about body clocks. We probably should have seen that, the college football playoff was a group of people that were going to pick it together, but it doesn't change the emotions of getting left out when you're going undefeated and you see two teams that just everyone objectively can agree probably don't deserve to be in front of you based off of your results.
Do you,
An
do you,
injury is
do you think?
and yeah.
Well, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, do you think? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think if the snub doesn't happen, that how? I mean, do
That
you?
a 2 and 10 is possible.
Well, not even that. Do you think they're still rolling? Like, do you think? Because I don't know that. I mean, we can blame it on the snub, but I don't know
Yeah.
that. The reality is, some of the things some of the things that really hurt them with that roster last year was NIL, and we haven't written about this, we haven't talked about too in depth because it's hard, it's nebulous with NIL to know real
Right.
numbers. But from what I understand, when Florida State was being an early adapter to NIL, You know, they got bargains. You know, it didn't cost them $1 million to get Jermaine Johnson or Jared Verse. It didn't cost them, you know, those guys. The market was so different then. Florida State was one of the first ones to go into it. A lot of schools wouldn't, and so by the time then you go 13-0 using that model, it almost came back to haunt them because now that next cycle going into last winter was when salaries went insane. Going into the
Correct.
2024 year, because and so now Florida State goes back to market, and I think they're thinking they're going to get a discount on players because they were the first ones in. They've had all the success, and the players are just going to want to come. But you know, when you talk to people around the program, they couldn't get in with those top transfers anymore. Like you know, they couldn't get a Jared Verse or you know Braden Fisk or a Keon Coleman or any of those guys anymore. The market had gone so high, and Florida State, with all the supportive battles in they have, was nowhere near. You started getting the Texas Techs and the you know these schools with oil money and these other schools throwing so much money. You touched on at the very beginning, like Florida State really wasn't equipped to fight that battle. So maybe there's a big step back anyway. Definitely not 2-10, but I
I
don't, you know, I don't know.
I don't think anything that we could talk about is going to point to 2-10.
Yeah.
But I think your question being, I personally don't think they're still rolling. I don't think that if the snub doesn't happen, if we get in and then we lose a game in the playoff, right? Tate can't lead us. Let's just say that happens and we lose. I think the similar team probably comes in. I don't think that had anything to do with the transfer portal. It certainly didn't have anything to do with the last 3 years of high school recruiting. And that's something that could maybe be talked about as far as like, does that need to be higher? I don't like asking myself questions. That needs to be higher. There needs to be a better job of high school recruiting, and that has shown out now in concert with a snubbing, with flying to Europe to play a football game, coming back and playing on a Monday night because you know kids know how to play football on Monday nights, and just all of those things that come together to cause that. But I can't say that you know we're a 11-win team if things roll differently. I don't think we would be rolling. I think 2023 was a wonderful year, a well coached team, and they had problems, but it didn't matter because of the unity that they had and the buy-in that was there. And leadership is also I want to hit on that again. It's so important in all aspects of life. And in 2023, people that weren't leaders in 24 almost were leaders in 23 in the lower level leaders behind Verse, behind Travis.
Right.
I don't want to throw out names, but there were guys that had a standing and looked up to in the locker room. And then the next year, people were like, "What?" Like I said, I'm not going to name those guys that I deem that way, but leadership is so huge, and there was none of that last year, and
Yeah, man.
especially at the yeah.
And you touched on, I mean, a few things there that, man, you know, we could go for hours on this topic, especially just that one team because, um, you know, it it was some, you know, the lack of leadership is a big deal, but even the construction of the team, I wonder if that would have been different if they didn't
It,
get snubbed because, and
as
this
far
was
as what
well, and Jeff made this point a lot on headlines at that time, and I thought and I didn't have a strong opinion. Corey was on one side. This is kind of similar to normal. Corey was on one far side, Jeff was on the other extreme, and I was kind of in the middle. But you know, Corey's point was, man, you got to keep throwing gas on this. Like you got to get right back there. You can't take a step back. You know, you went 13 games, they screwed you. You got to keep going. You got to do whatever you got to do to get back to that level, prove you're on that level. Jeff's point was, man, this team's not ready for that. Like this team was built for that run in 2023. Um, and so, you know, to try to just go out and get a high price quarterback and go shopping and get the best pieces and try to make another run right now, that may not really be best for the program because you may not be able to get to where you want to get to anyway. You're just not built for that. And you can't buy a whole new team. And it's okay to take a step back and like maybe spend a year developing Luke Kromenhoek and Brock Glenn and seeing what that looks like going into next year with this core, and then you're developing the young guys. Because one part of this that never gets talked about, you brought the high school recruiting, and it's hugely important. But I feel like there's a it feels like to me when people bring up this topic, and including some of my colleagues on the site, that that it could have been both. That you could have had
Hmm.
the success you had in the transfer portal and also been building through high school recruiting the way Georgia has, the way Alabama did, the way Ohio State did mostly until last year. They bought that team mostly. Um, that you could do both. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure that that path existed. Like, because I think what happens is once you go as heavy in the portal as Florida State did in 2020, starting 21, going definitely in 22 and 23. And he had to do that. We all know that. He had to do that or he would have got fired. If Mike Norvell didn't adapt to
Hmm.
the portal, he would have gotten fired two years ago. So he had to go heavy in the portal. The only path I think would have been to figure out a way to maneuver going heavy in the portal, but also still trying to focus on these young guys and developing them. Because what happened is all the guys you signed in 2021, 2022, even 2023, they all bailed because they didn't get to play and they weren't seen as part of the the program, you know? And so that's I think it's like he had to take the path to the portal. He sacrificed high school recruiting, but even the guys they signed didn't stay because they weren't getting developed because the focus wasn't on them. That wasn't the focus of the program. The focus was we're recruiting these older guys over you, and then next year we're going to bring in some more older guys over you. So I think that's where they screwed up. But I'm not sure that. I mean, I think that path is a lot harder than people think to do.
100%.
I mean, is anybody? I don't know if anybody's done that really.
When is Mike supposed to say, okay, I saved my job,
Right.
I went the transfer portal, I'm going the old way that we go, and that's high school only, and then we'll bring in a piece once in a
Right.
while. When does he make that
Yeah.
call to do that? And that's the argument with Corey and Jeff is like we're sitting there, you're looking at what happened last year, and you've got a team. What can we do to make it better? Or what can we do to make our program better? That was the
Right.
conversation at that time,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right.
And I think we did a little half measure.
Well, I think they
And
tried. I think they tried to go Corey's approach.
exactly, it was a half measure as a result
Right.
of not succeeding and not bringing
Right.
in, not being able to secure a couple more pieces. I mean, if
Right.
I don't remember the transfer portal recruiting like that, but if there was a tackle that could have came in with Ward, it certainly changes the dynamic of that team. And I personally was sorry, everyone. I personally was in favor of DJ over Cam because of the price, and let's do a half measure
Right.
on how we go forward and win some games, sustain where we are, and then build, and then we'll go win a national title when the time's right. Like that was my opinion,
Half
and
measure is
then it
probably, you
still
know what,
didn't work.
half measure is probably a good way to put it because I don't because they did try to make a run again, but not to the level they could have. Like, Cam, I've always contended I don't know that they could have gotten Cam Ward because I think Miami felt like he was their only hope. They had no other options at quarterback. And it wasn't, I don't even know that they knew he was as good as he was, but they knew he was the best thing out there. And whereas Florida State felt like they didn't need the best thing out there. Like Mike thought they could run the ball, they'd be able to run the ball, and they just need somebody who's decent and game ready. I think that's what the advantage to DJ over Luke Krummenhoek and Brock Glenn was he's played in big games. He'll be game ready. And so I think they were okay with that. Miami was like, no, we need the best possible guy we can get because we have no chance at quarterback otherwise. And obviously they were right, but the half measure is a good point because if Florida State was really just all in, then maybe you fight longer for Cam Ward.
Right.
Um, but also is that arrogance on Mike Norvell's part to think I don't need the best. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think I think Mike Norvell getting full of himself after 2023, I think is a fair thing to bring up in the sense of we can't get maybe everybody we want, but I'll make these other guys great.
Or
Um,
that I have that the floor has been
right.
lifted already with what we have, and we talked about this, I think last week, but just like we all thought it was going to be okay because of the confidence in Mike he had in the offensive line of being able to run the ball. But what's he going to do? Say, yeah, we can't run a lick before the season. Like he's not gonna tell us that.
during
So
camp.
he has to have that confidence and buy-in. And then it was just, yeah, it was obviously not there. Not after the first drive.
Well, listen, man, I really want these. The idea behind this show is going to be that we kind of dive into one topic. We did that. I think we were pretty successful. I think we stayed focused. Give ourselves some credit. I think we didn't get off to too many tangents. Um, I want to have some resolution sometimes. I want to feel like we got somewhere that and I don't know that it's going to be all that possible in 25 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever, however long we talk. But a lot of the topics we talk about won't be quite as complex as this. I mean, this is a big one.
Correct.
Um, so, man, I'm looking forward to it, dude. I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last few years. Shoot, I mean, I don't know, 10 years when you started sending in questions to Seminole Headlines. I tried to get you to write some stuff for warchant.com in the past because I think you got some. I'm not, man.
I'm
You're
just
not
messing.
exposing you. But yeah, no, I think hopefully people will get used to or enjoy some of your opinions and different perspectives, not just the same people talking all the time. So I'm glad we're doing this, man, and look
Me
forward to
too.
doing more in the future. And we'll talk again soon.